Welcome to Simmons Says, where I help emerging and struggling writers create intriguing plots and compelling characters to make their stories hard to put down and even harder to forget. Hey, here we are, another Simmons Says, and this time I'm going to try and be brief, but I'm going to talk about something that can be a little complicated depending on what kind of material you're writing. Back in my day, as I said, I would try and be brief, but I'm going to compress. Back in my day, in my youth, my younger youth, a lot of heroes were exciting, fun, a good role model, but they were also one-dimensional. They had almost no flaws, none. I mean, they were good people, good men, good women, whatever. They were great characters. They did the right thing every time and rode off into the sunset, flew off into the clouds, whatever. The problem with that is that society, shall we say, matured and wanted more complex characters, wanted characters that reflected a little bit more real life. Maybe because some of us felt we couldn't live up to perfection, absolute being right all the time, whatever that meant. Or maybe because we were becoming jaded, I don't know. I think certainly the media began to show us more behind the scenes of our so-called heroes, both in sports and politics and so forth. And so maybe we were starting to say, well, wait a minute, then maybe these superheroes can't be just good guys or good gals or whatever. But anyway, more flaws began to filter into the stories. More quirks that worked against the character, or sometimes the character was downright despicable initially, and then would, on the hero's journey, improve, grow, whatever. Some of the characters of the 50s and 60s were like Peter Gunn, Ward Cleaver from Leave It to Beaver, Joe Friday from Dragnet, a lot of the superheroes, Superman, Green Arrow. All of these were, and especially Batman's Green Arrow and a couple of others, were wealthy men, millionaires, which when millions meant wealth, who were magnanimous, who were trying to do good for the community, for the greater good. But no, Tony Stark. I mean, eventually, as you move through the Marvel history, there's a point where he was an alcoholic. And he began to drink too much, and it began to affect not only his personal life, but his life as a hero. Batman's obsession with protecting became a pure obsession. And he became the darker knight because he began to get really sort of caught up in the brutality of the things that he was going up against, and the personal and emotional struggle of the trauma that had caused him to become the Batman. So these are things that we started to look at that made characters more interesting, gave them more depth, gave you more subplots, gave you more characters to play off of and come in and out of their lives. And that's not new. It wasn't even new in the 90s. If you looked at Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein, because the monster was not Frankenstein, it was Dr. Frankenstein. Victor Frankenstein was obsessed with proving that mankind, humankind in particular, him, could create life. Something that was, especially at the time this book was written, a God-given ability only. So you can't be satisfied with being able to cure certain diseases, being able to help heal wounds. No, I've got to be like a god. That's a flaw. So flaws in your nature, in your character, in your personality, cause you to do what you do, cause you to be who you are. And the flaws in the characters that we love in books and films also impact on the directions that they take. If you look at anything from 12 Years a Slave to Harry Potter, there are flaws in the characters, not just in the villains, not just in the supporting characters, but in the protagonists themselves. Because the more you have to rail against, the more you have to fight against, the more you have to overcome internally before the external conflict, the more power of character, your ethics, your beliefs, your personal strength must be called into play. And the more we Joe, Jane, Jamal, and Shaniqua average, the more we can root for you. I'm not saying devastate an individual with every possible flaw you can find. I'm saying pick the appropriate ones. As you're doing their background, where they came from, who their parents were, what's their culture, what kind of, social status that they have, what were their friend situations like, where did they go to school, all of these things. As you're coming up with these things, think about what worked against them from inside. Even being shy can be considered a flaw if it gets in the way of quote unquote normal progression, being able to go out and interact with your fellow human beings in order to do better in school, to make friends and all that. That shyness, if you're too shy, can be something that gets in your way. It can be considered a flaw. Obviously, if you're greedy, if you're a bully, if you're overly aggressive, if you're mean-spirited, if you, again, you want to get deeper, if you have drug addictions, things like that. These are things that can work against your protagonist. And then, depending on the kind of story you're telling, they maybe have to overcome it in order to succeed. Walter White in Breaking Bad, all right, starts out, he just wants to do right for his family because he's dying of cancer. By the end of the series, he's become another person, and not a beneficial person. The nice, average individual that he was when it started is not where he is at the end. He fell victim to a number of flaws within his character. And the more things he did, I'm not going to tell you the whole story, the more things he did, the deeper and deeper he fell into darkness. So again, the direction of your character, your protagonist, doesn't always have to go from bad to good. It can go from good to worse. And how you end your story, tragic, happy, or open-ended, that's also impacted by what your character has to struggle against internally as well as externally. Okay, that's it. Think about some flaws in characters that you enjoy. Think about some flaws that you can come up with or that would be appropriate for characters you're creating. And let me know what you come up with in the comments below. Take care.